Good evening, and welcome to Digital Dialogues, our weekly broadcast where we explore the pressing technological questions of our time. Tonight, we delve into a particularly contentious issue. Should social media platforms actively censor content to combat the escalating problem of misinformation? It's a question that sits at the intersection of free speech, public safety, and corporate responsibility in the digital age. Joining us to dissect this complex topic are two distinguished guests. Dr. Evelyn Reed, an expert in digital media ethics who believes in the necessity of some form of content moderation to protect society, and Mr. Ben Carter, a staunch free speech advocate and journalist who argues against censorship, warning of its potential dangers. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss such a critical issue. Social media platforms have undeniably connected the world in remarkable ways, fostering communication and access to information on an unprecedented scale. However, this powerful tool has a significant downside: the rampant proliferation of misinformation, which I define as false or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. We've witnessed its detrimental impact across various sectors, from public health crises exacerbated by false medical claims to democratic processes undermined by manipulated narratives and election interference. Societal cohesion itself is threatened when communities are fractured by divisive and baseless assertions amplified online. To suggest that social media companies are merely neutral conduits, devoid of responsibility for the content they host, and, crucially, algorithmically amplify, is, in my view, a dangerous abdication. These are not passive bulletin boards. They are sophisticated systems designed to maximize engagement, often inadvertently promoting sensational and false content in the process. Therefore, I argue that there is a profound ethical and societal imperative for these platforms to implement carefully considered censorship measures. This isn't about stifling legitimate debate or diverse opinions. It's about creating a safer digital environment by removing content that is demonstrably false and actively harmful. Such interventions are necessary to protect vulnerable individuals, particularly children, and those less equipped to discern credible information, and to safeguard the well-being of society as a whole. Of course, any such system of content moderation must be built upon principles of transparency, consistency, and be guided by clearly defined ethical guidelines, with robust oversight and avenues for appeal. It's a complex challenge, but one we cannot afford to ignore.
Thank you, Alex and Dr. Reed. I appreciate the opportunity to present a counter-perspective on this vital matter. The bedrock of any truly democratic society is the unhindered freedom of speech and the open, robust exchange of ideas, even those that may be unpopular or unsettling. While I share Dr. Reed's concerns about the spread of false information, I believe that resorting to censorship by social media platforms is a perilous path, fraught with unintended consequences. The immediate and fundamental questions that arise are: who possesses the authority to definitively label something as misinformation? Who appoints these arbiters of truth, and what are their inherent biases, conscious or unconscious? How can we possibly ensure that censorship decisions are made impartially, without succumbing to political pressures or corporate interests? History is replete with examples where ideas once deemed heretical or dangerous falsehoods later became accepted truths. We must be cautious about granting any entity the power to preemptively silence voices. I am deeply concerned about the slippery slope argument. Censorship that might begin with what seems like obvious, harmful falsehoods, like demonstrably fake medical cures, could incrementally expand. It could easily morph into a tool to stifle dissenting opinions, suppress uncomfortable truths, or marginalize critical perspectives that challenge the status quo. Instead of empowering platforms to decide what we can see and say, our focus should be on empowering users. This means investing heavily in media literacy education from a young age, fostering critical thinking skills, and promoting independent, transparent fact-checking mechanisms that operate separately from the platforms themselves? The answer lies not in less speech, but in more informed engagement with the speech that is out there.
Dr. Reed, you've compellingly argued for censorship as a protective measure, based on the potential for significant harm from misinformation. However, Mr. Carter has voiced serious concerns regarding the practicalities, who decides what constitutes truth versus misinformation, and the inherent potential for abuse or bias in such a system. How would you propose establishing a system of content moderation that is not only effective in curbing harmful falsehoods, but also robustly safeguards against such biases and protects legitimate free expression? What mechanisms could ensure fairness and transparency in these critical decisions?
That is, without doubt, the central challenge, Alex. Implementing such a system requires meticulous design and unwavering commitment to fairness. I envision a multi-layered approach. Firstly, platforms should not be the sole arbiters. Instead, independent, diverse review panels composed of experts in relevant fields, ethicists, legal scholars, subject matter specialists, and even representatives of the public should be established. Secondly, the categories of misinformation subject to removal must be very narrowly defined and directly linked to demonstrable, severe harm. For example, incitement to violence based on false premises, or disinformation that poses an immediate threat to public health. These definitions must be publicly accessible and transparent. Thirdly, the processes for content review must be clear, consistent, and offer users a meaningful right to appeal decisions to a body separate from the initial decision makers. Transparency reports detailing the volume of content removed, the reasons for removal, and the outcomes of appeals would also be crucial for public accountability. While the complexities are significant, the profound societal harm caused by unchecked, malicious misinformation justifies the effort to create such frameworks. It's about responsible governance of these powerful information ecosystems.
Dr. Reed's proposals for independent panels and transparent processes sound commendable in theory, but I remain deeply skeptical about their practical implementation. The concept of a truly independent review panel, especially one funded or appointed in any way by these multi-billion-dollar corporations, is questionable. Whose interests would they ultimately serve? Furthermore, defining, quote, demonstrable severe harm can still be highly subjective and open to interpretation, potentially varying across cultures and political contexts. Even with appeal processes, the initial act of removal can have a chilling effect on speech, and the sheer volume of content makes consistent, nuanced application incredibly difficult. We risk creating a system where platforms, or these appointed bodies, wield immense power over public discourse, subtly shaping narratives by deciding what information is permissible. This is a concentration of power I find inherently dangerous.
Mr. Carter, you advocate for education and robust fact-checking as primary tools against misinformation. However, considering the sheer speed and immense scale at which misinformation can propagate across social media platforms, often reaching millions before any correction can gain traction, are these measures alone truly sufficient and timely enough to counteract the damage? Dr. Reed has pointed to situations where content might be so immediately dangerous, perhaps inciting imminent violence or panic based on falsehoods, that it seems to require swift removal. How do you respond to the argument that some types of harmful content necessitate more immediate intervention than education or after-the-fact fact-checking can provide?
Alex, the speed and scale you mention are indeed formidable challenges, and I don't underestimate them. However, swift removal through censorship isn't the only answer, and carries its own set of problems. Firstly, we need far greater transparency from platforms themselves regarding how their algorithms amplify certain types of content. If sensational or false information is being algorithmically privileged, that's a core issue that censorship doesn't fix. It merely prunes the leaves while the roots remain. Secondly, investing in pre-bunking, proactively inoculating the public against common misinformation narratives before they spread can be highly effective. Rapid response fact-checking also needs to be significantly scaled and better integrated, perhaps with clear labels visible to all users, rather than outright deletion. My concern with swift removal is twofold: the high likelihood of error and rush judgments, and the fact that censorship can drive these narratives underground. When content is removed, it often doesn't disappear. It migrates to less transparent corners of the internet, where it can fester and become even harder to identify and counteract. It also risks creating martyrs or lending credence to conspiracy theories that they are trying to hide something. Openly addressing and debunking falsehoods, however challenging, is ultimately more resilient than suppression.
While I wholeheartedly support increased transparency, algorithmic accountability, and enhanced media literacy efforts, Mr. Carter, to suggest they are sufficient for all situations is, I believe, an underestimation of the immediate danger some forms of misinformation pose. Pre-bunking and fact-checking are crucial long-term strategies, but they are often too slow to prevent harm in rapidly unfolding crises fueled by viral falsehoods. Think of a fake emergency alert causing mass panic, or targeted disinformation campaigns designed to incite immediate violence against a specific group. In such cases, where clear, imminent, and severe harm can be directly attributed to specific pieces of content, platforms have a responsibility to act decisively. This is not about suppressing uncomfortable ideas. It's about preventing tangible, real-world damage. There is some content, such as direct incitement to violence based on provable falsehoods or child exploitation material, that has no legitimate place in public discourse and requires swift, unambiguous removal. To argue otherwise is to prioritize an absolutist view of free speech over public safety. In closing, I want to reiterate that the challenge of misinformation is one of the defining issues for our digital society. Its potential to disrupt, divide, and directly harm individuals and democratic institutions is immense. My argument for carefully implemented content moderation by social media platforms stems from a belief in their societal responsibility. This is not a call for widespread censorship or the suppression of legitimate, diverse viewpoints. Rather, it is an assertion that platforms must take active steps to mitigate demonstrable severe harm propagated on their sites, especially when that content is verifiably false and dangerous. The goal must be a balanced approach, one that vigorously protects free expression while also acknowledging that with great power to connect and inform comes great responsibility to protect users. We need to foster a healthier, more resilient information ecosystem. And this, I believe, necessarily includes removing the most damaging forms of misinformation under clear, transparent, and ethically sound guidelines. It's about stewardship in the digital age.
To conclude, while the problem of misinformation is undeniably serious, the solution of platform censorship, however well-intentioned, presents a greater threat to our fundamental freedoms. The principles of free expression and the open marketplace of ideas are paramount. Granting corporations, or any centralized body, the authority to act as arbiters of truth is a dangerous precedent. Such power is inevitably prone to error, bias, and abuse, potentially stifling innovation, dissent, and the very uncomfortable conversations that can lead to societal progress. We must resist the allure of seemingly quick fixes that chip away at these core liberties. Instead, our unwavering focus should remain on empowering individuals. This means championing critical thinking, investing in comprehensive media literacy, demanding greater platform transparency, and supporting independent journalism and fact-checking. These are the sustainable, democratic tools to combat falsehoods, not the heavy hand of censorship.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, and thank you, Mr. Carter, for your articulate and impassioned contributions to this crucial debate tonight. You've given us a great deal to consider. It's abundantly clear that navigating the complexities of misinformation involves a delicate and often challenging balance, protecting our society from genuine harm while steadfastly upholding the fundamental freedoms that underpin a democratic society. There are no easy answers, and the path forward requires ongoing dialogue and critical engagement from all of us. We encourage our audience to reflect deeply on the perspectives shared here today, and to continue engaging critically and responsibly with the information they encounter online. That's all the time we have for Digital Dialogues this evening. Thank you for